Welcome to our new office space. For those of you
If you're on YouTube
who are watching this segment, you're so welcome. You're welcome because we decided not to put you all into the learning pod. We decided that we would have a nice kitchen behind us, and these
I think this
are
is a
our
cafe.
virtual chairs that we can lean on. Oh, I'm glitching out. Okay, Raquel's disappearing. We found some new immersive software that is a feature of this recording platform. And Raquel is just having a field day watching her hands and her hair bun disappear. That is what's happening. It's Tuesday.
Let's be real. Augmented reality has a little ways to go.
Just a little ways. I mean, yeah, but at least we're not just pixels. I mean, did you ever play video games when you were growing up? I can see you. I can see you in our kitchen. Is this a kitchen? There's a San Pellegrinos in the background, I think. There's like way too many candles. I do like the plant thing.
No, this is not a kitchen. This is a cafe. We're in a cafe. Look, yeah, the San Pellegrino, exactly. And it's like all done nicely. And then is that coffee beans next to it that you could buy?
Oh, that you can buy. We're on the wrong side of this. Look, there's the stairs going up to the. Anyway, if you're all listening to this, you're like, what's happening? We have a virtual background. Yes, we've arrived into the 21st century, just 21 years late. I played video games growing up, and I still play video games, but I will caveat that by saying I play Super Nintendo video games all the way up to Nintendo 64, and then I'm done. I don't.
The only one I played was Tomb Raider. I liked Tomb Raider.
What, at an arcade?
No, I played Tomb Raider. My brother had it, and so
what device was it on?
He had an Xbox, and then I worked for PlayStation for a long time, so I do like PlayStation a lot, and their VR is like, but I didn't do that till I was a fully grown adult.
Right. See, I did not. I think I might have had like a PlayStation that had a disc. You put the disc in.
Right.
Play Spyro. I'm not good with. I have friends who play Call of Duty. Elisa, Pang plays Call of Duty. Jeremy plays Call of Duty.
I can't do those. I'm like a full-on strategic. If it's not like a puzzly strategic game, I'm just not there for it. I can't do it.
Yeah, I don't. I think, I'm not. If it's an actual physical puzzle, I'm 100% there. I proposed a puzzle party the other day, which didn't go down very well. I didn't understand. I was like, we can all do a puzzle. And people were like, you're a monster. And I was like, what do you mean? This is my puzzle with donuts. And they're like, this is the worst puzzle ever. And I was like,
maybe it'll be like you do the puzzle and everyone else does the party. So it's a puzzle party.
Maybe. Maybe what ends up happening.
In the corner
being like, yeah, I got this. The final edge piece. Everyone else is wasted. And
when did you start doing puzzles? Like, how old were you? Because you're a big puzzler, and I'm just very curious, like, how this puzzling puzzles me. It's been a long week, people.
You're in exams week.
Yes.
I started my puzzling journey at the young age of every age that anyone starts puzzling. I'm not really understanding when
do people start puzzling?
Children are given puzzles. You know, there's
age?
wood block things, and they're like, oh, put the thing. And I remember distinctly my mum buying me some puzzle that had like it was like when you're really small, you get the ones that like there's like
it has
so
the
much
handle,
space in between.
right?
It has a handle.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have outgrown this. I have outgrown this. And and then every now and then I'd be like, but I'm just going to put that piece in. I'm just going to put that piece in anyway, just to prove that I still can. And then I graduated from that into like Bible, like just bitterness.
Just
like,
the reward systems there are so strong. We're like, I win again. Doesn't matter. It's my 1000th time doing this 4-piece puzzle set. I win.
Yeah. But this is what my older sister would always note when we were growing up, was that other people would like play a thing and then they'd be done with it. Whereas I would play like Mario Kart was my thing. And I would play Mario Kart and then I would play it again. And then I'd play it again. And then I'd play it again. And then I would play it to shave off half a second. And then another half a second. And then I would write down and I would have ledgers of
Stop it.
No, I would. And I'd be like, yes, but I'd unlock all the levels and then I would do it and say, how fast can I finish it? How fast? Like if it was I think it's RPG games. What are the No, it was the scrolling games.
Yeah.
There was one called Pirates of Darkwater, and I was like, okay, how quickly can we finish it? How many lives can we keep? How can you do it without having to use the extra emergency life? Like I just got obsessed.
This just explains so much. I was not allowed video games, so the Lara Croft, like I took Tomb Raider and I would like play my brothers. But I wasn't actually allowed video games except learning video games, so like logic games.
That was what you were allowed?
Math, yeah.
You may do math quest. The one thing that I had in common with you was actually, but this was by choice, I had freedom of games, but I chose Typing of the Dead.
Typing? I've never heard of Typing of the Dead. What is this? I mean, is this what's happening to your keyboard every time that we talk?
I have thunderous typing. My fingers are very strong.
They are.
They're heavy. They're heavy, strong fingers. And typing on them, it sounds apparently like a doom. It just sounds like the computer
It sounds like
apocalypse.
Someone's attacking your house with
giant rubber pellets.
With a wrecking ball. Just but like a bunch of them at once.
Which, funnily enough, people would say about me if I was walking anywhere. They're like, oh, Christina's coming. Kentia would say that all the time. She's like, Christina's in the building. Can you imagine how... This is why I
get that for my laugh to make you feel any better.
Yeah, but you don't walk into an office space or anywhere just combust into laughter. Like you don't just like walk in.
I mean, this is me. I do kind of do that, like,
but not unprovoked. I'm walking.
Not unprovoked.
It's happening all the time. I have to get there anyway. My point is, I would play Typing of the Dead at every opportunity. Because it was a game that we had in Hong Kong in the arcades, where instead of it being House of the Dead, which were zombies that you shoot with guns, it was actually modified and everyone had strapped keyboards on them. And they... This was my favorite game. And I had to type. And if anyone's played House of the Dead, you'd have to shoot, like every now and then you have to shoot those like really easy ones where they're like the little worms, and those were just one letter. So I was like K J A. And then
the people
yeah,
had like the players had a keyboard strapped on.
The players, instead of guns, we had keyboards attached, like actually in the
like physical keyboards.
No, the keyboards were like in front of you.
Oh, so it's just as nerdy as I thought it was. Okay.
It is just...
Go on.
So then you'd see these images of these people running around with zombies everywhere, and you have to type your way out of it. And I did, but the problem was when there were bosses and there were a lot of punctuation. There was a lot of punctuation, exclamation marks, capitalization. You don't understand how difficult it can be to defeat a zombie like overlord when you have like that weird button on the keyboard that I don't even know what it is called. The option, the weird squiggly thing, or like you do the wrong dash, then that's it, you're dead.
Oh my god!
You didn't type your way out of that one. You died. Cost you money.
Oh,
I think if we did that, if we just replaced, could you imagine how much more articulate everyone would be? If
but
they went into the arcade,
help becoming articulate, or were you just?
Are you saying I'm not articulate?
You are abundantly articulate, but I don't know if the game is to be.
No, to be fair, they were often very long Japanese names, and so I was like, well, I'm learning another language now.
Oh, so you actually had. I thought you were just like, it would tell you something to type and you would type it, but these are like actually
they would be around. The zombies would be around, and above their head would be the word, like waving like the zombies.
And was it like a useful word or just a name? Like, was it like an apple-shaped thing would have the word apple in Japanese?
They had different versions. So, and also, if it was, it got harder as you got, obviously, because this game makes so much sense. So it got harder as you go up the levels, and you would have to do longer words, and some of them wouldn't be words because otherwise you are so used to typing them. So you would be quicker. And so like they would have like apple, pear, smaller things. And then these little slug things, like I was saying, they're like one letter. So you'd be like, okay, slug, K, F, A. And then you'd be like, chimichurri. I don't know what the word, but then I found an English version and I was so happy. I actually I think I can't remember who it was. It might have been Matt that had to try and find Typing of the Dead for me on my computer because I was like, I want it now. And I got an emulator and I tried to find.
Did you find it?
No. I think I could if I wanted to now, but I mean, now I just type. Now I type in real life.
Thunder.
Yes, I am the Thor of typing. Yes.
Dang.
Yeah.
Dang, the things we learn.
Yes, yeah. So welcome. This is Kitchen Cafe Talk today.
Kitchen Cafe.
Brought to you by your hosts, Kristina and a much shorter Raquel.
Yeah.
You're lower.
I am
you
much
gotta
shorter.
lift up your
my
your
chair. I can't go up. There, no, it's kind of it's very uncomfortable. I'm just gonna slouch on back over here.
So anyway, what we were talking about something before. This was our random nerdy brunch break moment. Talking about what was it?
That was a weird intro, but we were talking about something that has nothing to do with anything to do with the intro. And we were, which
and this may never surface.
This was just way too fun, so I think it was worthwhile anyways. But we were originally jumping on here because we had a meeting, but we got onto a topic that we thought we had to jump on and record, which is whether, I guess it's not whether you should or shouldn't, but it's just the whole etiquette surrounding relationship status.
Yes, and why disclosing your relationship status. Like, let's say we're sitting in a cafe in real life, not in this virtual space. A cafe that looks similar to this. White tiled walls, nice weird bench thing in front of us. And,
plenty.
And I think it's different. I've had this conversation before where there are two facets. One is the reading a book at a bar, whereas in England, like I've said before, like you can go and sit in a pub and read a book and be, you might not be left alone, but you can go and be social, but not become a meat market, where people are like looking around to see if you're available or if they, and it's
not weird to sit by yourself is essentially
it's not weird to go and sit by yourself and but the second side of it is when you're having a conversation with people or you're starting you're engaging in any kind of conversation in different levels. I often notice that people will find it so much easier to ask me about my relationship status in a sneaky way. But I never hear anyone doing that with men. I don't hear that happening.
Can you give examples of a sneaky way? What is a sneaky way?
Well, like when someone says like, oh, who was that you were sitting with earlier? Or, when someone says like, oh, are you going away with your partner this weekend? Like I say I'm going away. or I'm going to go and do something. Oh, who are you going with? And this I find difficult because when you read the other signs of the conversation, you're kind of sitting there gauging what someone's intention is and what their ulterior motive is. And you're kind of playing this dancing game of, being polite, being nice. I'm very loquacious, as we know. I'm on a podcast with you and a show, and I won't stop talking, apparently. And so I'll have a conversation, especially if it's about careers, especially if it's about the things that I love and the things that I'm passionate about, and creativity and music and all of that. And then what I've realized is people get a lot of ins because I say, I love this, and they're very relatable subjects to speak about. Yeah. But then they'll come in and be like, oh yeah, I went to see that. Like, who did you go and see that movie with? Or like, if you wanted to go and see a movie, like, what would you see? Or would you? And people used to be like, oh, would your boyfriend would probably, like, people would be bold and be like, oh, your boyfriend probably wouldn't like that or whatever. And I'd be like, who said that's? Okay. Who said who? Why did you drop that in there?
You know what though? I would almost prefer that because I find I often have the opposite where people. Like, okay, so I'll have conversations exactly like what you're talking about, kids. It's all about work and values and technology and whatever. It's very platonic conversations. But then they're actively, like, not asking me if I'm with someone. Or all the signs are there, but they're actively, like, not trying to go there. And so, I mean, I'm not someone who's just, first of all, whether I want to meet up with someone in a relationship type of way, whether it's whatever, in whatever capacity, is, I think, something that is completely up to me regardless if I'm in a relationship or not. Like, that should not be the defining reason why I might meet up with someone on a date type thing. So I don't like the idea of having to say I'm in a relationship to not do it. But at the same time, it is an easy out sometimes. So I have, over the last number of years, actively stopped doing that.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job.
And obviously, if there's something really natural, like if we're talking about something where it just plays in and my partner does something similar or whatever it is, like, I'm happy to throw that in. But I'm not gonna do it to try to throw someone off a scent or something, or to like get them to stop trying or whatever it is. Like, I think that's weird because if I'm sitting there and I don't want someone to try, I just don't want them to try. It's nothing, like, it's not just because I'm in a relationship. It's just like, I just don't want you to try. So, like, just stop.
I
right?
just want to read my book. I do my puzzle.
Yeah. Or sometimes you enjoy the conversation. You're like, this is a great conversation. But then why do you have to walk away being like, should I have or shouldn't I have, like, mentioned that I have this relationship? And why do you need to? But like, they should be clear about what they want.
And even if you didn't, like, I don't like people assuming anything. I don't like that. Would you rather someone be blunt? I guess that's a good question. Because I think that's how I feel too. Like, I don't like that people are dancing around it. You don't like that people are dancing around it, even though they're dancing around it in a slightly different way. And the issue is just like, if you have an ulterior motive to talk to me, then just make it the motive and just say it. Like, if you just want to meet someone, say it. I think the thing that I feel bad about is that this society has brought people up for it to be one or the other. Like, and there are a lot of people out there that haven't made that choice yet. They just want to have a chat. They just want to have a chat. And then they're like, oh, I'm really, this was a really, and I have had a conversation with a person, and they were like, they started talking. They came over and said, sorry, I really liked the conversation that you were having with your friend. Like, can I partake in this conversation? I was like, that is a very impressive way of literally being so blunt, but at the same time just honest. And then at the end of it, they were like, well, I really enjoyed that conversation. I'd love to have another conversation like that. Here's my number, and if you want to have another conversation like that or similar, then I'll leave that with you. But I also do think you're beautiful. And so I'm going to put that there as well. So you know now, goodbye. And I was like, that is impressive. Like, just, Beli, here you go. I'm going to leave now.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that people are brought up with any kind of navigational ability around it. So it's kind of like, it's hard. You know, people are in a bar with their friends. And if it is one of those bars where people go to meet other people, you know, that's the nature of that bar. And I don't know how I feel about those things. But then on the other side, it's like, it's hard to meet people. It's hard to date. It's hard to meet people. I just don't want to put my relationship status into a decision-making filter, right? I don't want that to be when I say something, I'm like, well, I would prefer not to disclose to you those kinds of details because I don't know you, and that's my my life, my family, my, you know, it's like when people assume certain things and then you have to be like, well, actually that is entirely incorrect, and then you have this awkward moment where they try and backpedal and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that it was
oh my god, yeah. And the wasted time, I think that's the other thing, is like, we're both really busy, so if you're gonna come over and talk to me and take up 10 minutes of my time or more, even sometimes, and then at the end all you wanted was like a number and a date, that's really like wasting my time here. So because I like to be open to, I meet interesting people all the time, and I am happy to meet up again with those interesting people, like from all walks of life, all over the world. I think that's amazing. That's why I love travel. Like, I want to have those conversations. What I don't want to have is someone with ulterior motives who isn't upfront about it. Because
then 5 years later, you're like, here's one of my best friends. And they're like, oh, I
got friend zoned.
You've obviously been that person that people are just waiting.
But like, how? That's such a waste of everyone's time. Like, just, I think, be upfront. And I get that you want to be like suave and everything. I don't know, suave. I just got a vision of like a slick backed hair.
Just someone walking in the room like, hello.
I mean, not at least I could call it a mile away. At least
sashay in. I heard that laugh from yonder. I just simply had to come and discover more about this bunless woman.
Sometimes bun.
Sometimes hair bun. And we're talking about hair buns, Kay, just for those who are not.
Right. We're not watching.
I guess we should put this into two categories, though. Or two different elements. One is the professional capacity, where, I mean, I don't know about all of you listening out there, and you're, especially those who are in a position where you're meeting new people. You go to a conference, whether it's a virtual conference or you're going to events of some kind. You're meeting new people. You're curious. You're passionate about what you do, because that's all of our listeners. I see yous. And you're working, you're hustling, you're like, there's that side of things where I don't want to be vetting myself. I would like to be fully myself and show up to an event and be as I would be with you, which is how we did meet. We met at an event and I was like, you're great. You're so great. And you were like, ha, 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 ha. And I was like, yeah, she's so great. She's so great. Let's do stuff. And then we didn't do anything for a year, maybe, probably, before we started the brunches. It was something like that. But but I love our group of people, our group of humans, because there isn't that agenda. And I think that it's so fine for there to organically become things. But I don't like that for most of my growing up, I have found the energy of people who are kind of side looking at you and kind of trying to size up whether or not whether you're interested in them for any other reason. And I'm like, just appreciate that I'm interested in what you have to say and focus on that, because then you'll be way more interesting than, you know, someone who is constantly trying to be impressive. And I think that's hard. I'm finding it tiring, because what I've recognized is, like you said, it's easy to say I'm in a relationship. It's very easy to say that, whether you are or you're not. And I used to, whether I was or not.
I think all of us have done that all the time.
Totally. Like,
you just don't want to give it the time. You're like, I'm in a relationship. Sorry, bye.
You know how hard it is to turn around and say, I am not feeling like I'm interested in this.
Wait, you need to tell me the moment you decided you were going to stop, because I have a whole moment where I decided I wasn't going to say that anymore. So tell me your moment. I'm really curious.
Okay, well, I did it when I moved to Canada. I realized that I didn't want for people to know my orientation, my relationship status. I'm very proud of my like all of those things, but I don't want for them to be defining qualities, because I was finding, especially in the music industry, and I'd love to know what you think about this, but you know, I was often the boss's hot secretary, or just got the job because I was this cute little girl, which, I mean, let's be honest here. I don't feel like I'm a cute little girl, but I mean, I'll take it. But yeah, so when I arrived, I was like, you know what? I just feel, I don't know what it was, but every time I move a country, I'm like, or move to a new country, I should say, I feel very reflective on what happened in the last country and then what I want to change. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to feel disempowered, because what it means is I'm now taking control of the situation. And when someone actually, one person within this industry turned to me and said, oh, we were talking about something, and he turned around and said, do you have a partner? And I just stopped, and I was like, this is, you know, you feel like you're about to say a response that is like, oh yes, you know, and I stopped and I said, can you just tell me how that's relevant? And he looked
like something just clicked.
Yeah, I just went, but I did it from curiosity rather than like, I don't want to talk about that. That's not your job to ask, but like, this is too personal. Or
you were like truly curious.
I was like, oh, is there a relevance to this? Because the reality is, and he turned around and went, you're so right, there's not. Because this wasn't someone who wanted to date me. This wasn't someone who wanted to,
it was just,
and I think maybe he was like, ooh. Or just curious about, yeah, and to me, I was like, yeah, great, okay, and then he just left, and we just had a really we carried on running this event, doing these things.
Oh, I love that.
I just wanted to know, because I've said to people before, how many women do you hear asking that of men in positions of influence or leadership, where like, how easy is it for them to say that? And for someone like me, I don't ask somebody, because I'm not interested.
You know
in
what I think a lot
status.
of people do in business, though? They use it as a connector. It's like a way to connect with people.
Yeah, but so how much does that marginalize others?
This and totally.
Yeah,
I think it is like human to try to create. I'm trying to word this the right way because my brain is very fried, but to basically try to create pathways to more communication and try to create similarities that they can relate to. And I think, to be honest, I think relationships is just kind of like a lazy way that people do it. But I think it's like something that they're like, okay, this is, you know, potentially an easy connection that I can make with this person, and then we can talk about their partner and they get to talk more about themselves. So it's, I mean,
which again, though, this to me is a societal construct that perpetuates things that I am not a massive fan of.
I love that you questioned that.
I do.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I do it a lot. I do these weird social experiments where I'll walk into a room and see how big or how small my energy can be in a room. I'd go in and test how invisible or visible I can be. Have you ever been in a club or a bar and you're like, and people just, you seem to be the person that people keep pushing, you know, that feeling of being like, oh, I'm the one that's not important. Right. And then other times I've walked in, and I would encourage all of you to try this. It sounds really weird, but I promise it's very interesting because you start to play with how people are responding to your energy. We assume that that our look and our verbal communication and potentially our body language as well is what's doing that, but we're not accounting for the energy that we hold. And so what I've been wanting to do over the years is I've spent so much of my time, and I think you and I have spoken about this a lot, so much of our time being closed because we're like, well, we can't, because otherwise we'll get asked this, harassed, followed, you know, all of the things that happen to so many people that shouldn't. And then you also have marginalized genders and people who are in positions of underrepresentation and marginalization, and they have a whole series of barriers as well. So of course you're going to start putting up your own barriers to protect yourself. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to take responsibility for someone else's wanting to impose certain things, but that means that I have to get better at communicating my energy and my presentation of self to others. So I have to make really active choices all the time, which means I'm actively going to sit in a bar by myself and write my book. I am going to do that. I'm going to do it by myself. And if someone is like, I'm going to come up and have a chat, then if I feel like having a chat, great. If I'm not feeling it, then I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to go back to my book writing or book reading. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So my story for when I stopped telling people that I was in a relationship was I was working a promotions job back when I was in university, and already I didn't like the idea of telling people I was in a relationship, but I like to make people go away. I didn't like the concept of it, and I knew that. But I did still do it in times where I was like, I just need this person to leave me alone quickly. This is just going to be a way to like just get them off my scent. Like, just go. And I was in a mall, which is so odd, like broad daylight around Christmas in a mall. And I'm running from my job where I was like promoting whatever it was, like something for Christmas. And I was just running to grab a snack from the cafeteria area. It's like, okay, and I had such a small break, like maybe 10 minutes to like go across the whole mall and come back. And this guy starts following me, which is not the first time it happened. And he's asking a billion questions, and I'm speed walking. I did not stop. I did not turn my body towards him. Like every single part of my body language was like, I have no time for you. And I just kept going, but I was also trying to be like somewhat, I wasn't really trying to be nice, but I was trying to not be like totally intense. And also keeping in mind that I was wearing the shirt of the company I was promoting. So I was like, I need to be really cautious about how I deal with things because, you know, I'm still branded right now. And, yeah, so basically the guy just kept going on and on and on. And I did the whole like, sorry, I have a boyfriend thing, 'cause he just kept going. And then he followed up, and it wasn't the first time, but it was the last time I was willing to hear it because I just had enough. And he was like, well, I don't see him here, which is like, I think we've all heard that, right? Like, I don't see him here, which is just so disgusting on so many levels. Like, I just like, how do you even come back at that? It's like, is that really...
Are you expecting me to have a chaperone? Is that right? Is that what that is? Like, do like you have
a chaperone or like...
I'm not a like complete human being?
How disgusting is that? Or like, because my partner's not here, all of a sudden I'm open for... business
for like, someone else to like come in and like, this is not cave time.
Do I just survive for men? Like, what is this right now? That's all I'm here for, is just any man who's willing to pick me up.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm alone.
It was so bad. And I just, I just looked at him and I was like, listen, I'm not interested at all. And I need you to stop now. Stop following me. Stop. And he kept going. And then he started negging me. So he started telling me I was weird and why. Yeah, I'm not even joking. And so finally I just stopped, Kristina, and I looked at him and I was like, I'm calling security in 10 seconds if you don't leave. You have 10 seconds and security will be here. And then he left with words of how weird I was. Because, God, can you imagine a woman who doesn't love that?
Oh, no. I mean, there's a great clip actually on, it was like in New York or somewhere where someone does that. And this woman is like, oh, I'm ready. Oh my gosh, I'm so ready. I have 8 kids. And they have no father. I am so ready. And then she started chasing him and he started running. And it was like, I would love to do that and be like, you know what? Yes, I have these debts. I have these bills. Are you willing? Are you willing? Yes. Are you willing to do this? Because I'm so ready. If you are ready.
Do you have a ring?
Do you? Yeah. Have you met? Do you know? Do you see this cafe behind me? I have expensive taste. Like, I have very expensive taste.
Oh my God. It was so bad. And I was like, after that was like the moment where I was like, I am never going to tell someone, I'm never going to use I'm in a relationship as an excuse to tell someone to leave me alone. I'm just going to tell them I'm not interested. Yeah. And then that's when I started like honing that skill, because it is a skill and it feels really uncomfortable at first and you feel terrible and guilty and all of these things that like the patriarchy really has like systematically impressioned on us, that we're here to make everyone feel comfortable and God forbid we don't. And so it took a lot of deconditioning, especially from myself. I found it did take me a while, but then
I want to highlight what you just said though, when you said like normalizing, trying it again, try it in different ways, try saying things in different ways, and then process it with like what we call our fire friends, process it with people that are doing this as well, or understand, or have been there, or still are there. But have that conversation, because you've got to try.
And then you have to ask yourself, like, if it didn't work, why didn't it work? Yeah. Were you presenting differently? Like, was there incoherence with how you were presenting physically versus what your words were saying?
But even then, part of me is like, I will sit.
No, it shouldn't. But
it shouldn't. But then, yes, deconstructing it and then looking at the other person and being like, okay, is this a person who's pretty articulate, who knows what they're talking, or is this someone who might not have, who looks like they're coming from a place of fear, or they have less articulation ability in one way or another, right? So you have to be really observant. But I love the deprogramming thing as well, because I think that's one of the big things that, the women's liberation movement is not that old. We're still not, there are still so many people that make comments about people in, like, I've had people say recently, like, wow, you're really smart, when they say it like that.
What?
And no, I love the compliment. Like, I will take, and just to be really clear with everyone out there, I will take every compliment of every kind. I will still take it. But what I then ask myself is, how can I encourage someone to normalize that, and to normalize when I say I'm an actor, for them to be like, it's the same way that I don't want people to be like, oh, what have you been in that I've seen? Because I know that then it takes me time, and now it takes less and less time. But it originally took me a lot of time, and to work through my emotions of defensiveness of, I'm not the lead in that show. I'm not in it even for more than a second or two, or whatever that is. Just like when someone says to me, like, I say, this is what I do for a living, and they're like, wow, how did you manage to figure out how to, maybe, like, how did you manage that? Like, that's really impressive. You're a woman.
Do they say you're a woman?
No, but you can see it, because I'm sitting at a table with a whole bunch of people who are typically men, and no one's done that to them. But what I will say is, when it is done in in the spirit in which it hopefully is intended, it's a really lovely compliment where someone's like, wow, that's really impressive. So what I did was I actually started normalizing that being the behavior for everyone. So I looked at that person back and was like, oh yeah, thanks. I did this and this. And then I was like, well, what did you do? And how do you fit into this? And they would say, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so impressive. But I genuinely would think that. And I'd be like, that's a really impressive thing. And they'd be like, oh, I really like that compliment. So twisting it, it's not always meant in a rude way. It's biases that we've grown up with. But actually normalizing the compliment itself was for me, it felt better to normalize that in a room than be the person that someone like can be interpreted as patronizing you, right?
Interesting. And I'm curious on that note, how much of that was interpreted from their behavior versus from thoughts you had about yourself that you were trying to deconstruct. So, and I say that in the sense that like sometimes people give me compliments, and if it's hitting on a specific thing that I'm really sensitive about, I will get defensive even if it's a compliment and not at all meant that way, but I'm like, oh, that's hitting a real soft spot. Like,
I've had that a lot too.
Right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
How do you have any tricks on how you're recognizing if it's a you thing or if it's a them thing?
Gosh, I mean, I'd be interested to know what you do. Everything I do, I write out. If it's a situation that's happened, I write it out, because when my mind works, everyone's brain works slightly differently. Yeah. So figure out what it is that you do to process, and then go away and do that. Like, but you have to be it's intention to do it. So I would go away and say, this person said this, they did that, blah, blah, blah. This is how I know them from previous things. This is what's happened. I'm now piecing together this. And then how did I feel? I felt really defensive, and I did this in the time. And then I'll like look at it the next day and be like, okay, was that a me thing? Was that a them thing? And I get one step closer. But I also sit back and say to myself, I don't have to have it all right. I don't have to do a full flip. I just have to understand one piece more. So then I turn around and, I've done things where I've turned around and said, I'm not really understanding how I should take that, because I'm feeling, I felt like, oh, was that a compliment, or was that a little bit offensive? Like, I don't know.
Do you ask people that? Because I would love that.
I sat on a beach once. I mean, this is like years ago. I went onto the beach, and there was all these women that looked like Victoria's Secret models. And I literally was sitting down with these new friends that I made. And I looked around and I was like, whoa, you are all very intimidating. Hello. I'm going to sit down here, and I had my crossword, just like the puzzle party, but with crosswords. And they were like, they looked like they were from a movie. And then I would like look over and be like, I'm staring now. Look like you're from the movies. But then they weren't that interesting after that, whereas with you, I'm like, you look like a Barbie. Oh my gosh, you look so beautiful. And you're like, ha 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 ha. Okay. Let's talk about really intense stuff now. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a sustainable friendship.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I do something similar to you. I'm not someone who, I think I'm a bit more auditory about it. So I will usually take a walk, and I will think about it on my walk. And sometimes I'll re-listen to certain audiobooks that I know trigger certain things in me. So if I'm like, okay, this is a sensitive spot, and this audiobook has a chapter in it that talks about the sensitive spot, and I feel like that's possible that that's triggered, I'm going to listen to that, and I'm going to think about what happened yesterday. And then through that, I can suss out, usually, I think, was this a me thing or was this a them thing? Like, no, I feel like I really did go through my steps. No, I don't feel like I was being sensitive about it. Okay, I'll address that. Or I'll think about it and I'll be like, oh, you know what? I was a bit stressed. This thing tipped me off. I'm just going to let them know that I was off my game yesterday and apologize and be like, this is what I really meant by it. And I'll go back to that person and follow up, because I think that's really, really important step, and it creates clarity on both fronts. I might not tell them specifics because we all know I'm not great at that, but Kristina gets like the shortest stories from me on what's going on in life, and then a few months later she'll get like a whole like
I just get this like
dumped.
I'm fine, and then this and this and this, and an hour and a half later like okay.
Whoa,
just a waterfall.
But yeah, like I do think it's really important to go back and be like, okay, where did this come from, and then actually acknowledge that with the person, because I feel like otherwise it just sits in me. But when I say it out loud, I feel like that's a lesson I learned, and it's out of me. Like I don't know how to you know what I mean that. Like it's out there, and
well, it's like
action is fully done.
Action complete.
Yes.
Yeah, I do think that there's something to be said about taking your feelings out and putting them on a table and doing a little dissection exercise. I mean, we're just creatures, and we're often creatures of habit. So when you do decide that you're intentionally going to live your life, there are so many things that need unpacking, and that is again about training and creating a resiliency and a responsivity, I guess. I don't know, responsiveness.
And the space and the curiosity.
And
you're very curious, which is so awesome. I'm curious too, but I think you're more curious about...
It's not a competition.
No, it's not, but it's actually something that I want to do more of. Like I see how you think.
You can have it.
I see how you think about things, and I am really curious, and I am always pushing things and questioning things, but I guess I would say you're very intentional in your curiosity. I'm maybe a bit more general in my curiosity, and I would love to get a little bit more honed in and specific like you do. Like just even what you said about coming here and being very intentional about how you wanted to represent yourself and how you wanted to present, and being very intentional then about how people perceive that, whereas I tend to be more general about that curiosity. And
I don't and there's no wrong I've always found that the way that I've done it I self-iterate, and that's been a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways, because you can often outgrow. And when I say outgrow, I don't mean grow above or below or any of that. I just think you end up moving and shifting, and you fall out of fit with people. And that my older sister and I have had these conversations a lot about it being kind of lonely sometimes, because you're like, I'm moving, and I'm iterating, and I'm this now and this now and this now, and it's very disruptive. Existentially, it's very disruptive. But the plus side is that you get to have these like extreme moments of this joy where you're like, oh, I just figured out how to be in a room, and so many people turn. And I've taught stage presence courses and in the past, and someone actually said to me the other day, I walked into a guitar store, and they were like, oh my gosh, I remember you did the stage presence workshop like 4 years ago. And I was like, oh, and they were like, that really helped, because what I said was a lot of what I learned from theater school, which was learning how to hold space. And that has a lot to do with breath and the tone of your voice and how calmly you kind of start to present and what you need to do to be able to do that. And so, I used to do this with, the students at the recording school I worked at. And I would talk about it all the time, because I'd be like, when you walk out into the public, or you're living a creative life, or you're living a life that you want to design, you have to understand how to hold yourself in that life, because so many people don't, that their posture is down, they're looking down, their eye contact is, it's wishy-washy, and everyone has those things where they recognize that they do it, or they don't recognize, and their friends recognize. Their friends are not that iterative, so their friends are not going to say anything. They're just going to say, that's how I am. I don't accept that. I don't accept when people make assumptions about my preferences or my orientation. I don't like that. because that means that what I found was that I was growing up into a construct that someone else had made for me. So I was like, well, if I don't feel that way, and if that's, then that must be wrong by virtue of the rest of society telling me. And that, I was like, okay, how do I change that? And then how do I change that in myself? Because I'm the only one I can ever change.
Yeah. Ponderize.
Ponder that, BBs. Well, thank you for joining us. Do you have any tips, Raquel? What are your tips of, I don't know, what, like, just being curious in your way? Because you're curious in a different way.
I am curious, and I do social experiments as well. I actually have done that for a long time, but I think how I'm a little bit different is you really take into account how people react and respond to you. And maybe that's also being in acting, like being an actress and going to theater school. For me, I try to give as little shits as I can about how people react to me. I'm like, take it or
I
leave
can vouch
it.
for that. Yep. It's just, which I would like to do more of. This is why we're a good team in this cafe.
Right? We're always learning from each other. And I think I can learn lots from you. And yeah, I don't know. But I'm always pushing. I'm always pushing myself. I'm always trying to be uncomfortable. Just a little bit. I don't need to be like massively uncomfortable. But I think, I can't sit in comfort for too long. So that means I need to learn more about myself. What makes me tick? I need to learn more about how I deal with the people around me, what my values are. How can I bring my values to light more? So if it's kindness, how can I find ways to treat others with more kindness than I do? Maybe even just in small conversations, maybe even just by giving someone a second and making eye contact, How often do you have a really quick conversation with someone at a bus stop or coffee shop or whatever, and you're passing sugar or whatever, and you just don't even look at them in the eyes? Or with someone at the cash register, like how often do you just be like, yep, thanks, Kate, see ya? And so, like finding little things to push and grow. And so I guess I'm also iterating constantly. I don't guess I am iterating constantly. But yeah, I think what I would love to jump into when I'm done with this bit of a chapter of my life is jump more into what you've done really well, and that's looking at how people perceive you and not just ignoring that.
Yeah, there's always a balance. I think it's, again, we talk about this a lot, the membrane versus the wall. And how do you retain your best version and present your best version of yourself that you value and appreciate? How do you present that and, still feel safe?
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing. There's that can, whatever that looks like to all of you, that are listening and watching right now, only you can answer, which is exciting. And I think that's why when, I'm always so grateful that we get to spend this time together and we get to like have these conversations, because just by virtue of us being like in this weird virtual cafe with you, we get to break it down a little bit, and then you get to go away and go, okay, how do I want to be different today without compromising my meanness to others? And
we're your community. So we're your fire friends. I think that's the whole point of Bombshells, is to have people so that when you're growing and constantly changing and bumping and moving and shifting, there's a crew of people here.
Yeah, that have also normalized that.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well done. Good job.
Yes. Happy Tuesday.
Good luck the next time you go and read a book or try and do a puzzle in public. Let us know how it goes. Bye. Thanks for listening, bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.